Hello and welcome to the Big Purple Blob Morning Show. This podcast is hosted by 6 professional family life and wellness coaches who are passionate about helping the American diplomatic community thrive through their unique challenges. We are also eligible family members with over 100 plus years of combined experience living abroad. Trust us, we know what you're going through. So relax as we share some practical advice mixed with foreign service acronyms, empathy, wisdom, and a bit of humor.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Big Purple Blob Morning Show. My name is Katie Fowle. I work with international schools and virtually with children who are having difficulty reading. And I'm here today with a fellow Purple Blobber, Susie. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I am Susie Church Brown. I am a parent and wellness coach, and we're going to talk today about a topic near and dear to hopefully many of your hearts, physical fitness.
And Susie, you know, after Thanksgiving, probably everybody kind of has it in the back of their head. I know my pants are really tight. It's getting kind of cold where I live. So, I mean, well, at first, it's just checking in on Thanksgiving. How was your family's Thanksgiving?
It was really nice. We are just fresh out of lockdown. We got to actually have some friends over, which was really nice. But it was also the first time my eldest wasn't here because he's in DP1, so the equivalent of grade 11. And that was the only time they could go on their trip. So they went on a class trip and he wasn't here. So we had a lot of like saved containers for him because we wanted him to enjoy it when he got home. But it was, I know that's coming, that he's not going to be here for all of them, but oh, wow. It was nice though. It was really nice to share with friends. What about you? How was yours?
So I just wanted to say, I'm sure too, like that's the first experience of one of your boys not being home. So, I feel for you. Ours was good. You know, we're in Washington, D.C., so it's great to be able to spend it with extended family. So my parents came out to Washington, D.C., and one of my sisters came down from Boston. And then my sister that also lives here in Arlington. And, you know, it's kind of different when you're back in the United States because both my sisters work full time. You know, I'm flexible in the way that I work. So I was like, hey, I'll make everything because we don't have the staff or anyone to help us make everything. So, you know, I did a lot of cooking, but it's easy, right? It's easy cooking. It's not hard cooking because I can just go to Giant in my backyard. I don't have to go wash vegetables and everything. So it was wonderful to spend it with family. And it was wonderful to have, you know, the fresh cranberries that were really easy to get. I wasn't rehydrating dried cranberries, you know, how you improvise all your rest. I actually saw your Facebook picture. It was really cool because you were cooking with some of was it the traditional pots from Sri Lanka?
I got to do a Sri Lankan cooking class, which was absolutely fascinating. It was,
awesome.
This past week, it was amazing. I learned a lot.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, we talked about food. We talked about like gathering together with people. So, and I know last week you guys did a great episode with Shoria and Angie about mental health and physical health. And, you know, this all ties together, right? Like mind, body, spirit, and how we're functioning as a whole being. And Susie, you have a background in well-being, in wellness. So I mean, before we even start to get into strategies to try to get exercise when you can't get outside, what are some benefits of exercise, like from your background and your knowledge?
Well, I mean, beyond obviously fitting in our genes, because that's a part of staying active. And it does, you know, help with that caloric burn. I think embracing the benefits of physical wellness is part of that motivation to try and keep maintaining a steady level of physical exercise. So some of the benefits would be obviously for your heart and cardiovascular health and helping to not just keep your arteries clear, but also strengthening the muscle that is your heart, which is, you know, kind of the source of all nutrients in your body. Physical wellness also contributes significantly to stress management and mood, because partly endorphins, but also when you're regularly, rigorously working your body and exercising, that is a a way to deal with stress and to deal with other challenges outside of that, that area, that specific physical challenge. Excellent for your brain. They have done a number of studies recently where they have found that the connections and synapses in your brain are greatly benefited by cardiovascular exercise. And not just like for prevention of things like Alzheimer's, but also like actually making connections in your brain so you can think more sharply and with greater speed. So that's all bonus. It's great for your bones, especially stress, weight-bearing exercises like walking or running if you're a runner. Anything that puts extra stress on bones helps them to grow stronger because that's what their response is to that sort of stress. Caloric burn, obviously, and it is, I mean, it's just kind of a fun thing to do, especially once you get past the challenge of gaining that cardiovascular ability to maintain the exercise. I mean, it's especially if you do it in a group, it's a really positive way to interact with other people.
I know,
think?
Yeah, because I was thinking about this, like as we were going to go on and do our show, and I was thinking about like, what are the reasons why I've kept exercising in my life? And there's like a lot of different reasons, right? It's the stress relief for me, like especially during COVID, especially, as our kids have transitioned back to school, and we just had one of our daughters have to come back from school because she got exposed to COVID, like all these things, right? Stress. So I'm finding that the higher impact I'm doing with my physical activity, the more it's like draining the stress from my body. So I definitely feel that. And I know that that's something I need, because if I don't, I feel like I can easily be reactive rather than responsive, like in my home environment. So like stress relief is definitely something. I'm also finding that, and this has been true throughout, when my husband and I were in the Foreign Service, it's a way to connect. I think COVID though has been challenging, and I want to hear about how you've maintained your exercise groups, because, I remember when we were in Lagos, it was our first tour, and it was a Pilates woman from Argentina that was doing, Pilates, mat Pilates in her home. And it was a great way for me to meet new people and actually learn something new too, right? Learn a new form of exercise that I'd never done. So it's like stress relief, social connection, sometimes meaning and purpose too, right? It's like, man, you've just moved countries, or you don't know what you're going to do yet in this place. Sometimes learning a new sport or getting involved in something physical is a way to give meaning and purpose to your day, which I know for me has always been something that I've struggled with at times, trying to find, what am I going to do here? Who am I going to be here? But there's definitely barriers that can get in the way, right? Like not only motivation, but I think in the Foreign Service life, like actual physical barriers that can get in the way. How have you problem? Because I know I want to throw it back to you and then I'll share some of my experiences, but what have been some of the barriers getting in the way for you to maintain your physical exercise in the Foreign Service? And
We're, I guess I'm fortunate in that I am first and foremost a runner, right? Not great distances, but all you really need for running is a pair of shoes, right? And some clothing that you can move in. So everywhere we've lived in the Foreign Service, we have been able to embrace running. It was on sandy sides of roads in Niger, or, it just always manages to work out in some way. Some places maybe feel intimidating with the stray dogs, but we have managed to find a way to deal with those. We also really like to, because my husband often runs with me, we, find people in our neighborhood who maybe run around the same general speed, and we start running groups. And that is a great way to meet new people, but also, that support network. So you kind of positive peer pressure that helps keep you I mean, if you're running, and most of the time before the kids get up for school, so if you're running and you're meeting at 5,
yeah,
I think one time it was like at 5:12, we wanted to be like kind of amusing ourselves at the time that we were meeting, so 5:12. I mean, it's hard to do that unless you know that if you don't show up, you're disappointing other people. So, I mean, it's some of the greatest barriers though that I have found is probably temperature, because it is, I grew up in Idaho, so in higher elevation, cooler temperatures, always windy. Idaho is always windy.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, always.
Okay.
To the point where like we would ask my mom to drop us off and then we'd run back. So we were like not having to run against wind, but that's another story.
Wow. Okay.
It's always windy. But it's some of the places that we've lived, like Tanzania, hot. Sri Lanka, hot. So we have, the way that we deal with that is slowing down a little, listening to our bodies, making sure we stay hydrated. That's really the big thing, is staying hydrated. But it's always possible to find, maybe you can't run in your place, or maybe you can't do whatever exercise you love, but there are always options.
Yeah.
Being open and flexible to these other options is always a great thing. What about you? What are some of the things that may have maybe been a complication for you?
Yeah, I think similarly temperature, right? We went from, I guess first it was, I was a runner too. And then we went to Lagos, Nigeria was our first post, and it was so densely populated in Nigeria. And also the infrastructure of the road was very like potholed. So it was challenging to run. Plus it was my first post. So I didn't have the confidence necessarily yet to like ask people to go with me, or, like I wasn't that flexible in my thinking. And I really remember this. So it was our first post. And I remember we had this tiny little like apartment. We lived for those of you who've lived in Nigeria, we lived on Victoria Island in Lagos. And the compound where we lived had this little room that had like a couple, weight bars and then a treadmill. But what would happen is if you would run on the treadmill, the power would go out, right? So you'd be running on a treadmill and then woo, and then it would stop. So I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get exercise? And I need exercise for my mental health, right? So that was another place where I tried the Pilates, and then we also had a tennis, right? I mean, that's kind of the nice thing about a lot of these posts. Even in Mongolia, we had a tennis court. So, finding a coach, usually there's lots of different coaches available. So we found a coach, and he would come, 2-3 times a week, and we would play tennis. And that was like how I got my exercise. So that flexible thinking, I always tell my students, like, what's another way? I think sometimes with exercise, we have to do that too. What's another way if it's not going to work here? Definitely temperature though too. We went from Djibouti, which is one of the hottest places on earth. Dogs definitely an issue there with running. And then we went to Mongolia, which was one of the coldest places on earth. And I probably did something that wasn't super safe there. I don't know if any of you out there have ever done physical activity that might not be super safe, but I had 2 small kids. I was working at IST, or is it IST? The International School of Ulaanbaatar, ISU. And I would walk to school. So it would be like, I'm not kidding. We went from Djibouti, then I'm from Wisconsin. So I remember my eyelids freezing shut, right? And my husband's from Michigan. And so like when it started to get cold in Mongolia, I was like, called my husband. I was like, my eyelids are freezing. And he's like, oh, really? It's that cold? I was like, yeah. But I would walk from Star Apartments to my school, and it was dark. But I was a young mom. It was like the only way I was getting activity, because I was also working at that time, full time. And I just knew I needed it. I don't think the RSO liked it. So I think your whole point of probably making sure if you are doing something outside and maybe it's not, you're just learning the ropes, everything, find a buddy, that both the accountability, but also the safety factor sometimes in some places, right?
There's definitely safety in numbers for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, flexibility and trying to figure out the temperature, trying to figure out if the physical environment is, not the most desirable for the type of exercise you're used to. But that flexibility and thinking of different ways. Um, but how have you seen people manage during COVID, Susie? Because you've been in lockdown, you do hold exercise classes. Like, what if some creative ways you're seeing people manage, the whole COVID restrictions and trying to get their exercise?
I think, and I love the number of options that we have now online. And I feel like we've been doing, my husband and I, we do a couple of different options online that we like. And when our country was really locked down here, the exercise classes that I teach, I did online. I did them virtually, which I have to say I'm not a huge fan of leading an exercise class online. But it still kind of embraced that group mentality. We were all sweating together, and it's more fun that way. But just to be able to connect with like-minded people, and you're doing the workout together. There are some great options online, and we will put some links with this video of some of our favorites. But if there is a type of exercise you want to try, or if there's a type of exercise you love doing, there is an option online. And I think that it's not the same. Like I love doing yoga, and I love doing yoga like in person in the class. But when the studio that I go to here, their response to COVID was, well, our good karma will keep us safe. And they would just pack the room with people without masks on. And I thought, you know what? I'm just not okay with that. So online options it was. But a number of other people have also opened their homes or their talents and are holding classes in their gardens, for example. So, 4 or 5 people get together in a garden and they do yoga, or they do a workout, or I think this is how we are kind of relearning what an exercise class, for example, looks like. It no longer has to be inside of a building, inside of a studio, right? The ones I teach are outside on a tennis court, referring to your tennis. It's the perfect surface. Like, why not?
Yes, right.
Or there are so many fun options, and it's a really great way to meet. Our last post in Uganda, a fellow EFM talked me into going to this like aerobic dance class, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the style it was. It was insane. I have never been so sweaty in my entire life, just like dripping, and we were like shaking everything like on purpose. It was insanely fun, and it was a great time. I would love to do any one of those sorts of things, because that's the other thing that I think is really important to remember. It doesn't have to be a traditional, specific, you lift weights for 10 reps and then repeat. And then it doesn't have to be like, just movement can be exercise. Turn on music, dance around the living room. That can be exercise.
Yeah. And I think that's, coming back to America, I really noticed that housework tends to be a lot of exercise. Like some of these movement things that it's movement, right? Exercise is movement. And if you got to get your heart rate up, then do some jumping jacks or do some push-ups. But that's also what I try to keep in the back of my head, especially when I start to feel like lazy, is, hey, it doesn't have to be 30 minutes of just 5 minutes, move your body, And I do think sometimes it is challenging in the environments that foreign service families live in, like the pollution can be challenging, right? The temperature can be challenging, the physical infrastructure can be challenging. So being flexible in the thinking of, okay, am I going to use technology? Am I going to, go to someone's house and watch, maybe that could be a way to do accountability, right? You watch a video together, you meet a time. Yeah, just the idea of movement and mini habits. That's and how it makes me feel afterwards. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel less stressed. It makes me feel happier. These are all the chemical brain stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even for my children that I work with virtually, like we do movement breaks. It does help the brain learn, right? Like we got to move our body. And I think this is the challenge too. I mean, maybe we can end with talking about our kids a little bit. With COVID, oh my gosh, they can be on technology so much, right? And it's so bad for your body. And so, we've now put in some restrictions. It was kind of hard, the first year. I don't know, because they were on school virtually, it was like, then they couldn't go outside, but I like make them turn off their technology just to get up, right? And you had a great idea that you did with your boys, because oftentimes in foreign service life, you have extra room, right? You might live in a big house. So how did you guys work it to get your teenage sons moving?
So yeah, when we first arrived here to Sri Lanka, we had 2 weeks in-house quarantine. And that's a lot of together time with the family.
Yes.
So we had a bizarrely large house, and we turned one of the upstairs room into a handball court because we had the ball. We put them in our suitcase, and we figured like they had a blast, and they would have these like tournaments, and they had a great time. And they invented the game themselves. Actually, it wasn't our idea, and that was probably part of the fun. Like mom and dad are letting us play ball inside the house. This is awesome.
Right.
You're right. Like many of our houses are significantly larger than what we would live in the US. And unfortunately, a lot of the capital cities where embassies or consulates or wherever we are don't have yards. And so we have to be kind of flexible about where we're getting together. But us staying active, the big people in the family, is such a good example for the little people in the family.
Right. And I think that's a blessing that my husband and I have always been kind of active. So the girls have always seen that. And now we make them be active 3 times a week, And I was thinking for the real little ones that might be like in quarantine in Manila or something like that, because I've talked to some families who've had like apartment, big city quarantines or shutdowns, but creating a space, a room where there's like a trampoline, like a standing trampoline or like a big yoga ball, just like if you look on OT, like occupational therapy people, they do a lot of great things with sensory integration, movement. You can get great ideas if you're a family that, I was just thinking about families that might still be in big city apartment living quarantine and are like, how am I going to do any of this physical activity? I was just thinking OTs are really great resources. If you go online, say OT, exercises or something for kids, a lot of times they have they have materials that they use to have kids integrate different sensory modalities and everything. So that could be a place that you could get ideas if you're really struggling with your kids right now and you're in a lockdown or you're not having access to, swimming pool or a, American club or a yard or, something. I was trying to think of a way to get those little kids active, right? Or kind of elementary age. Yeah.
Right. Even inside in an apartment and they're stuck in there, say, or not, like maybe you don't have free weights. Even little kids can use free weights and, just give them a couple cans. Especially for little kids, that's perfect. That's a nice counterweight for them. And, maybe it'll shake up your whatever can that maybe is separated. I don't know. I feel like all we have to do is really be creative. Turn on to music and be creative, and we can incorporate movement into our lives. And I think it's so important to move more. Especially after, as you mentioned, all of the screen time. Big people too. We have been on screen so much in the last couple years. It's really just, it's ridiculous how much time we spend on screen.
Yeah, I like that ending on move more. So figuring out ways that we can move just a little bit more in our day, creating those mini habits around it. So not only do we feel better, but it also is modeling for our kids and hopefully creating that, sense of well-being in the home. I think that's awesome. So Susie, we're going to put links to our favorite technology, like where I really like Eckhart Yoga, beach bodies. Like we'll put links to all this, right? In the show notes for people. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we'll see you guys next week on the Big Purple Blob Morning Show. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to the Big Purple Blob Morning Show. It has been a pleasure to share our stories with you today. Now we want to hear from you. Tell us your story. Let us know your biggest challenge that you face at Post or back in the States. We also want to know what type of parenting support you need at this time. To connect with us, visit our website at thebigpurpleblob.com. If you found today's episode helpful, please share with your friends in the American Mission community. And remember, we want to hear from you because we are here for you.